I bit him, I should have killed him, and yet he's still alive. How is that possible? The stars were bleeding across the void, streaks of light bending and twisting, as if the galaxy itself were laughing at the chaos below. The human ship, a patched-up freighter named Argonaut shuddered violently as plasma bolts from the pursuing alien cruisers pinged its hull. Every system blared alarms in rapid succession, the lights flickering as the captain, who was very clearly not a trained captain but someone who had once watched a documentary on spaceship stuff, flailed his hands over the controls. Somewhere behind him, the cargo hold shifted with a groan, crates sliding against one another like reluctant dancers in zero gravity. The alien boarded without warning, materializing through a shimmering transporter field that smelled faintly of ozone and something metallic. She was taller than a human woman, slender but with the kind of coiled strength that promised sudden, brutal precision. Her skin had the smooth, reflective quality of moonlight on water, and her long silver hair seemed to float independently, weightless as if it had a mind of its own. Ears extended elegantly upward, tapering to sharp points, giving her a permanent look of heightened alertness. Her eyes glowed faintly crimson in the dim light, reflecting both the fire of distant stars and the thrill of hunting something alive. Her movements were liquid, graceful, a predator's ballet across the cramped bridge of the Argonaut asterisk. She struck the first blow with the kind of precision that would have ended most lives instantly. Her fangs sank into the human's neck, and for a moment she expected the familiar slackening of limbs, the surrender of life. Instead, he coughed again, and muttered, "Wow, first date and already biting. I think we need to slow down a little." Her lips pulled back in a mixture of disbelief and annoyance. I bit him. Why isn't he dead?" The words came out in a whisper, more to herself than to the man still blinking up at her with a combination of pain and audacity. He coughed once more, waved a trembling hand in what she assumed was supposed to be a defensive gesture, and said, "Maybe you missed a spot. Or maybe I'm just that charming." He grinned, blood smeared across his collarbone, and she felt an irrational urge to scowl in return. The alarms continued to scream, but the human had an uncanny ability to remain calm, or at least maintain an illusion of calm. He started fiddling with a console, flipping switches, with the kind of improvisational genius that only comes from desperation mixed with pure stubbornness. She watched him, exasperated, and found herself muttering a comment she never expected. "You're remarkably alive." He looked up with a smirk. Is that supposed to be a compliment or a death threat? She froze, a faint laugh threatening to escape. Her fangs had been inches from his neck a moment ago, yet here he was, making jokes as if that were the most normal response in the universe. The enemy ships didn't wait for their personal squabble to finish. Plasma fire rained across the corridor outside, and the human shouted, alien lady, can we maybe team up before we become cosmic confetti?" She raised an eyebrow, considered him for a moment, and decided that, yes, perhaps cooperating was tolerable. Barely. As she guided him through the ship's controls, he muttered complaints and jokes in equal measure. "You know, for someone with a taste for human necks, you're shockingly helpful with navigation. Ever considered a career change? Space cabbie, perhaps?" She growled something that sounded suspiciously like laughter, swiping at a rogue control panel with one long, elegant finger to divert a plasma burst. "I do not make a habit of entertaining fools," she hissed. He grinned, unbothered. "Guess I'm special then." They darted through asteroid fields, the human improvising maneuvers that no AI would have dared, while she calculated trajectories with lethal precision. He swerved the ship to avoid a tumbling rock, then grinned. "You know, if we survive this, I'm charging you for emotional distress." Her long ears twitched in annoyance or amusement, she wasn't entirely sure. The human's voice cut through the controlled chaos. "So, do you bite everyone you meet, or am I just lucky?" She narrowed her eyes. "I expected to kill you within moments. Your survival is anomalous." He shrugged as if this explained everything. Or maybe I'm just annoying enough to be immune. It's a gift, really. She allowed herself a dry chuckle. The bridge shook violently as another wave of enemy fire struck. Sparks rained from overhead conduits, and the human dove toward a console, yelping. Why does everything in space explode more than on Earth? Seriously, Earth is a training simulator in comparison. She grabbed his arm mid-fall with a fluid movement that made him squeak in surprise. I assure you, your species is notoriously fragile, she said, dragging him upright with a force that could have easily torn him apart if she had wanted. Yet here you are. He dusted himself off, grinning despite the blood and smoke. Yeah, here I am, and you're surprisingly tolerant for a deadly predator. Ever considered doing comedy? You've got timing. She tilted her head, long hair swaying, crimson eyes reflecting fire from the damaged hull. I do not perform for amusement, she said. Yet when he tripped over another sparking cable and made a mock bow, she found herself smirking despite herself. The battle raged on around them, the vacuum of space a cold, indifferent void, yet inside the cramped bridge, a strange rhythm emerged. She calculated jumps and vectors while he improvised, joked, and survived. Their banter became as vital as the shields, as essential as the thrusters. He made puns at the precise moment she would have expected a scream, and she responded with eye rolls and sarcastic quips that cut through tension like a scalpel. They stumbled into an abandoned docking bay mid-pursuit, the human muttering, "Great, now we're hiding in a giant closet. Do aliens have normal architectural standards?" She turned, fangs glinting in the dim light, voice low and dangerous. "Your species is illogical." He grinned despite a fresh bruise forming along his jaw. "And yet somehow I'm still alive. Maybe I'm the pinnacle of human evolution." A new wave of enemy ships approached, and for the first time the vampire alien woman found herself smiling. Not predatory, not cruel, but genuine, faintly amused. "I suppose I will have to keep you alive a while longer," she admitted. "For tactical reasons, naturally." He waved a hand airily, blood still on his shirt. Sure, tactical. We'll call it tactical." The sensors screamed. The Argonaut *S hull groaned, and plasma fire illuminated their faces with every flash. Despite the danger, the human made a joke about her dramatic hair floating in zero gravity, and she flicked him on the forehead, exasperated but secretly grateful for the distraction. Every maneuver, every near miss, and every sarcastic quip wove them together in an unlikely dance. Survival had suddenly become collaborative, deadly and humorous at the same time. By the time the first wave of enemies was behind them, the human had rigged a jury-rigged countermeasure that sent one pursuing cruiser spiraling into a nearby asteroid. He turned, covered in soot and blood, triumphant. "See, I told you humans could improvise." She blinked, long ears twitching, fangs bared in something approaching admiration. "You are incredibly irritating," she said, and he laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." The vacuum beyond the hull was silent again, the stars stretching infinitely. Inside, the human and the vampire alien woman shared a moment of tentative truce, the oddest alliance in the galaxy forming amid chaos, fire, and a persistent, almost absurd sense of humor. Survival had never been so unpredictable or so strangely enjoyable. And as the two of them floated in that temporary peace, she realized something deeply unsettling. Keeping him alive might be far more complicated than biting him had ever been. The ship groaned again, and she turned, eyes narrowing on the distant fleet returning to chase them. "Prepare yourself," she said, and the human winked. "Already am, but maybe next time warn me before the biting part, yeah." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Perhaps." And with that, the Argonaut and its impossible human passenger hurled once more into the chaos of stars, fangs, fire, and laughter intertwined. The Argonaut drifted through the remnants of a shattered asteroid field, its hull groaning in protest as the human clutched the console with a mixture of determination and mild panic. Sparks rained from overhead conduits, and every time he touched a switch, a little piece of the ship groaned like it was in pain or perhaps mocking him. The vampire alien woman crouched behind him, arms crossed, crimson eyes glowing faintly as she observed his frantic improvisations. "You realize," she said, voice low and silky, "that most of your species would have panicked into literal extinction by now." He threw a glance over his shoulder, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. "Hey, we call it creative problem solving," he said. "Some call it stubbornness. I prefer the dramatic flair explanation." She tilted her head, long silver hair floating in the artificial gravity like a river of moonlight. "You are irritatingly resilient," she admitted, the words grudging, almost a compliment. He grinned, smearing a bit of blood from a cut on his jaw. "Resilient, charming, modest, check, check, and check." The ship shuddered as a small asteroid chunk struck the hull. Sparks flew, and alarms screamed again. "Yes, yes," she said, dragging him back from a console that had begun to spark dangerously. "Let us avoid turning your flare into an interstellar funeral." He laughed, still bloody and unbothered. "I like the sound of that plan." The vacuum beyond the shattered field was silent, indifferent. Inside, chaos reigned, but it was the kind of chaos that forced cooperation, and she found herself noting his unusual aptitude for improvisation. He had no formal training, no understanding of alien technology, and yet he managed to reroute power, recalibrate thrusters, and even, miraculously, jerry-rig a rudimentary countermeasure that sent an approaching drone cruiser spiraling into a nearby debris cluster. She blinked at the display in disbelief. How? She trailed off because honestly she had no idea how he had done it either. "Luck, instinct, sheer human audacity," he said, as if that explained everything. She narrowed her eyes. "Most of those attributes lead to death." He smirked, adjusting a console knob with exaggerated care. "Yeah, but I'm special." She huffed, amused despite herself, and flicked a stray panel cover aside with one long finger. Sparks flew, narrowly missing him, and he ducked, laughing. "Okay, point taken. I'll add dodge sparks gracefully to my resume." Hours, or maybe it was minutes. Time was relative in the midst of chaos, passed with the two of them working together, alternately bickering and laughing. She explained segments of her species, technology, elegant yet terrifying, while he countered with human improvisations that would have made any protocol officer scream. "Seriously," he said at one point, leaning back and letting a circuit hum dangerously. "Your tech is amazing, but have you considered adding instructions that don't require a PhD, 3 lives, and a ritual sacrifice?" She tilted her head, ears twitching. "Your species is remarkably inefficient." He winked. "And yet here I am, alive, and you still haven't eaten me." She blinked at him, long lashes brushing pale cheeks. "Do not take your survival for granted." He shrugged, smearing a new cut on his forehead with the sleeve of his shirt. "It's a gift. I accept it humbly." She could have snarled, could have ripped him apart in a fraction of a second, but she found herself grinning faintly instead, long ears flicking with irritation or amusement. She wasn't certain. The next obstacle appeared with little warning. A rogue quantum storm twisting through the void, sending ripples of gravitational distortion across the field. The Argonaut shuddered as reality seemed to stretch and bend around them. The human yelped, holding onto a console for dear life. "This is not what I signed up for when I got out of bed this morning." She jumped to his side, catching him mid-fall with fluid precision. "You seem remarkably unprepared for literally everything," she said, crimson eyes narrowing. "Yet somehow still alive." He grinned despite his fear, brushing himself off. "I'll have you know, this is my specialty." Slightly terrifying situations, danger, laughing in the face of physics. She blinked. "You laugh at physics." He nodded solemnly. "Absolutely, and sometimes they laugh back, usually the explosion part." Sparks erupted from the console, illuminating her sharp features, and she reached over, swiping the offending panel with a long, elegant finger. "You have no concept of subtlety," she hissed, and he quipped, Subtlety is for species that don't survive interstellar combat. They navigated through the storm with a combination of alien precision and human improvisation, dodging spatial distortions and fractured asteroids. At one point, she leaned over, fangs glinting faintly, and muttered, "Do you have any asterisk idea how reckless you are?" He looked up at her, grin wide despite the blood running down his face. "Absolutely. And I intend to keep doing it. It's part of my charm." She growled something that sounded suspiciously like a laugh, long ears twitching as the ship spun around a particularly massive boulder. As the storm cleared, the human found himself panting, arms trembling, yet still managing to crack jokes. "See, that wasn't so bad, and I think I only screamed like 17 times, personal best." She arched an eyebrow. "Your species is uniquely resilient." He smirked. "You think, wait until I tell you about Earth's traffic." She blinked. "Traffic?" He nodded as if this explained the universe. "Imagine thousands of human vessels, all slightly broken, all heading in slightly the wrong direction. Terrifying, right? Sort of like this, but slower and with more honking." She narrowed her eyes in thought, and then she shook her head, trying not to laugh at the absurdity. "I do not comprehend this Earth traffic." Hours blended into each other as they repaired breaches, rerouted power, and managed to stay one step ahead of pursuing enemy vessels. She began to notice patterns in his behavior, the ways he survived by combining instinct, luck, and a remarkable disregard for self-preservation. He made sarcastic remarks during life-threatening maneuvers, which she found unnervingly effective at reducing her stress. "Why do you talk so much?" she asked at one point as he rewired the shield's mid-plasma strike. "Why do you bite so much?" He countered with a grin. "Answer, it's annoying and terrifying. Mine, it's distracting and works." She paused, considering the logic. "I suppose it is effective." He smirked, eyes glinting with mischief. "See, balance restored in the galaxy, predator and prankster." She didn't respond immediately, but the twitch of her ears suggested a faint approval. By the time they stumbled into a derelict space station for temporary cover, they were covered in soot, blood, and a growing sense of camaraderie that neither fully admitted. The human grinned at the flickering lights and twisted metal around them. "Ah, nothing like scavenging a floating junkyard to calm the nerves. You do this often." She snorted softly, a sound halfway between amusement and irritation. "Rarely. Most of the time the prey does not survive long enough to complain about the daycare." He laughed. "Well, lucky me." They explored the station cautiously, avoiding automated defense drones and collapsed corridors, each step punctuated by jokes and sarcastic commentary. At one point he tripped over a stray cable and muttered, "Gravity, I still don't get you." She reached out, steadying him with a hand that could have crushed him if she wished. "Perhaps it is not gravity you fail to understand, but your coordination." He smiled, brushing himself off. "I like to think of it as creative improvisation." She blinked at him, and for once, the words incredible and infuriating seemed to occupy her mind simultaneously. Night, or whatever passed for night in artificial lighting, fell over the derelict station. The human and the vampire alien woman settled near a flickering console, eating synthetic rations and joking about the absurdity of surviving interstellar combat together. "So," he said, smearing a bit of food on his chin, "you bite people, I survive everything, and somehow we're a team. Sounds like a reality show waiting to happen." She tilted her head, ears flicking. "Do not compare this to your primitive entertainments." He grinned. "Fair enough. Then we'll call it an epic tale of survival, wit, and interspecies cooperation. Much fancier." The station groaned under pressure from a nearby gravitational anomaly, but the human yawned, leaning back. "You know, if we survive this, we should totally go grab a drink somewhere. Preferably not in zero gravity." She raised an eyebrow, crimson eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Your species' habits are perplexing." He smirked. "Exactly, keeps life interesting." And so, amid derelict metal, flickering lights, and a galaxy indifferent to their existence. The vampire alien woman and the human continued their dance of survival, each step marked by danger, humor, and a curious respect neither expected. In the vast, unforgiving void of space, she realized that keeping him alive was becoming strangely compelling, and he, for his part, seemed to thrive on the absurdity of it all, laughing in the face of death while she watched, fangs bared, long ears twitching, and maybe, just maybe, enjoying the chaos a little more than she cared to admit. The void stretched before them like a dark canvas splattered with stars, silent yet ominous, as if the galaxy itself held its breath. The Argonaut groaned under the strain of countless near-death maneuvers, hull scarred with plasma burns, hull plating bent in shapes that defied reason. The human gripped the controls with white-knuckled determination, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead, while the vampire alien woman crouched nearby, long ears twitching in calculated anticipation, eyes glowing faintly crimson in the dim emergency lights. "You realize," she said, voice a silky hiss through the cacophony of alarms and structural groans, "that the final enemy is not impressed by your jokes." He smirked despite a fresh cut across his cheek. "I'd like to think humor intimidates more than your kind expects. It's an evolutionary tactic." She blinked, unimpressed, though a faint curl at the corner of her lips betrayed the tiniest acknowledgement that his audacity, if nothing else, was remarkable. The enemy fleet that had dogged them across half a star system was finally in view, the lead flagship massive, angular, and glinting with weapon arrays that could tear a starship apart in seconds. Yet here they were, battered, bloodied, and ridiculous, hurtling through the void together like a mismatched pair of cosmic circus performers. "So," he said, adjusting a sparking console, "we're about to do the impossible again, right? Avoid being dead in dramatic fashion." She arched an eyebrow, fangs glinting. "You do seem remarkably confident in your inevitable demise." He grinned. "Nah, confidence is for the dead. I prefer reckless optimism." They entered the gravitational field of a nearby gas giant, hoping to use its magnetosphere as cover. The human yelped as the ship was tugged violently, alarms screaming as thrusters strained. "Okay, gravity, you win this round." She moved beside him, placing a hand on the console that should have crushed him if she wanted, steadying the ship with alien precision. "Your species is astonishingly fragile, and yet oddly persistent." He smirked, dodging a loose cable that sparked dangerously. "Persistence is my superpower, that and bad jokes." Enemy fire cut through the void, plasma beams streaking past the hull. They executed evasive maneuvers with a bizarre rhythm, alien calculations blending seamlessly with human improvisation. The human's quick thinking, combined with her precision, allowed them to outmaneuver multiple interceptors. He ducked a stray control panel and muttered, "I swear I've got survival instincts even my species can't explain." She swiveled her head, long silver hair floating, eyes narrowing. "Perhaps it is curiosity. You do not fear death in the way others do." He shrugged. "Fear slows you down. I prefer humor, works in zero gravity too." As they approached the enemy flagship, the human rigged a sequence of makeshift EMP charges, rerouting energy from the shields in ways that made her pause. "You are audacious." He smirked, hands dancing over alien consoles. "Audacious is my middle name. Well, it would be if my parents had been slightly less boring." She didn't respond immediately, but a twitch of her long ears suggested faint amusement. The flagship opened fire with full arrays, plasma tearing through the void. The Argonaut shuddered violently, hull plating splintering under the onslaught. "This is it," she said, fangs glinting. "Prepare yourself." He leaned back, grinning despite burns on his forearms. "Always am, though a heads up next time about the whole you might die thing would be appreciated." She rolled her eyes, though the motion was subtle, elegant, almost feline. "You seem determined to test the limits of survival," she said. They weaved through the flagship's offensive like a coordinated dance, dodging beams and debris, with a mixture of precision and reckless improvisation. The human jabbed at controls, rerouting power to shields, spinning the ship in ways that defied her calculations. "Seriously," she hissed, "how do you remain alive while performing these ridiculous maneuvers?" He grinned. "A combination of luck, charm, and your occasional distraction. You enjoy scolding me far too much." Finally, they were within striking distance. The human set the final charge, humming nervously while she provided cover, striking drones and interceptors with inhuman speed. "Ready?" she asked, crimson eyes gleaming. He grinned, wiping sweat and blood from his brow. "Ready-ish," also slightly terrified. She leaned closer, whispering, "Your survival is fascinating." He blinked, then grinned. "Fascinating is my brand. Stick with me and you'll learn all about it." The charges detonated with a brilliance that turned the flagship into a spinning pyrotechnic display. Systems failing, drones collapsing, the void filled with debris and the smell of ozone. The human laughed, a raw, unrestrained sound of disbelief and triumph. She observed, teeth bared in a mix of admiration and irritation. "You survive against all logic." He smirked, floating through the wreckage with a twisted sense of pride. "Logic is overrated, plus humor. Never forget humor." As silence settled across the battlefield, punctuated only by the groan of their damaged ship, the two of them drifted together, examining the wreckage and each other. He laughed quietly, flexing sore fingers. "Well, that was dramatic and deadly and terrifying and also kind of fun." She inclined her head, long hair drifting like silver smoke. "Fun is not a concept I associate with death and destruction, yet you insist on it." He grinned, smearing soot across his cheek. "I insist on survival, and laughter is part of the package deal." In the aftermath, they repaired the ship slowly, methodically. The human had learned to anticipate alien systems in ways he hadn't thought possible, combining improvisation with quick reasoning. She had, in turn, learned that humans possessed a resilience that defied expectation, a peculiar blend of humor, stubbornness, and courage. Each had changed subtly. He no longer panicked at every spark or flicker of alien technology, and she had learned to tolerate, even appreciate, the absurdity and unpredictability of human ingenuity. As they drifted toward a habitable moon to recover, he leaned back, arms behind his head. "So, we make a pretty good team, huh?" She regarded him with a tilt of her head, fangs glinting faintly. "I suppose your survival instincts complement my abilities." Reluctantly, he laughed. "Reluctantly is half the fun, honestly." When they finally touched down on the moon's surface, the landscape barren yet oddly beautiful under the alien sun, they surveyed the damage. The human stepped carefully through the debris, flexing sore muscles and smearing dirt across his bloodied uniform. "I think we made it," he said, grinning despite the scratches and bruises. She stood beside him, long ears catching the faint light, hair drifting like liquid silver. "Yes, against all odds. Remarkable in a frustrating way." They paused, the silence filled with unspoken acknowledgement. The human had learned courage, patience, and the value of cooperation under pressure. The vampire alien woman had learned curiosity, adaptability, and that even the deadliest hunter might find intrigue in unexpected companionship. They laughed quietly, sharing stories of miscalculations, jokes, and improbable survival, bridging species and instincts in a way that the galaxy would scarcely believe. As night fell across the moon, stars sparkling like shattered diamonds above, they finally allowed themselves a moment of quiet. The human glanced at her, smudged with soot and faintly exasperated by the chaos they had survived. "So you still planning on eating me?" He smirked, brushing dirt from his uniform. She considered him, crimson eyes reflecting starlight, long ears twitching, fangs bared in something almost playful. "I find myself reconsidering," she admitted, voice low. "There is value in keeping you alive." He grinned, shaking his head. "Good, because I kind of like this whole not dying thing." She smirked faintly, a rare and dangerous expression, and together they looked out over the barren horizon. The galaxy was vast, indifferent, and filled with danger, yet they had carved out a space for themselves, bridging species and instincts with humor, courage, and shared survival. In that silent, starlit moment, they understood something neither could have anticipated. Survival was not just about reflexes or skill, not just about blood or fire, but about connection, adaptation, and laughter in the face of the void. And as they prepared to repair the Argonaut asterisk for their next journey, both knew that their bond, strange, improbable, and utterly resilient, would endure. The human had grown bolder, sharper, more daring than when the story began. The vampire alien woman had learned patience, amusement, and an appreciation for the chaos of human ingenuity. Together, they stepped forward into the unknown, prepared to face the galaxy with